They made a bobblehead doll of me. I've gotten lots of really amazing gifts over the years. One guy did a cosplay of Evangelion Unit 2, and I admired it, and he said, "Oh, well, this is the last time I'm wearing it, and I want you to have the head," which was huge. And I said, "Well, I know you really, really want me to have it, but I cannot fit that in my suitcase." But he insisted that he really wanted me to have it, and so he said, "You know, if you give me a mailing address, I will send this to you." And I really did get an Ava head in the mail. So it's in my office with all my other awesome stuff. Yeah, that was pretty crazy. Yeah.
How do you feel about playing Laura from Infinite Stratos?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, so I did the scripts for Infinite Stratos. And Matt, my husband, he was going to be directing it. So I was watching the show and I was working on the scripts, you know, and watching it for a couple minutes, and I paused it and I went into his office and I said, "By the way, there's a loud German girl in the show." That's it. There's not even anybody else that does. You know, there's one other small supporting character who's supposed to have a German accent. He had such a hard time finding anybody to do a German accent for this one character who has about 12 lines. Yeah, I had to act. There were some ancillary characters who each had 2 or 3 lines. I had to do those roles because he could not find anyone who could do a German accent. So, I'm the loud German girl. That's it. Which is fine. Yeah.
Who is your favorite voice actor to work with?
Well, that's a difficult question because we don't actually work with each other. So I don't really have a very good way to answer that, because when we're dubbing a show, there's just, you know, an actor inside of a booth, and then on the outside of the studio you have the director and the sound engineer. So that's normally all of the people. So I'm not really working with the other actors, so it's difficult for me to think of it from that perspective. From my perspective, the people I work with is the director and the sound engineer, so that's what my experience is. My experience is not really working with the other actors, so sorry. Yeah.
Did you always want to be a voice actress?
You know, I guess in a way I did. I mean, I always felt like I was an actor, and that was just, I feel like it's a congenital condition, and just like, it's, you know, stricken with acting at birth. So I just was, I don't know, I just always felt like I was an actor, not like someday I will become that, just more like I am an actor. That's just how I always felt. But, you know, I always had an interest from a really young age. There was some point when I figured out, like, oh, those cartoons are not actually, like, somehow talking themselves. There is some actor somewhere with a microphone who is creating that character. And I was really intrigued by that. I was even interested in just stuff like voiceover for, like, radio commercials or TV commercials and all that. I was very, very interested in it. But it was just kind of a latent interest that I had. And so I was just pursuing acting, just pursuing, you know, stage stuff, theater, because that's really easy to do. Every place has got some kind of a community theater, or there's a theater at your school or whatever. Ooh, we only have 5 minutes. So I've done this a few times. Anyway, she's awesome. She picked me up at the airport today. She's very healed up. So anyway, yeah, it was kind of a thing like in the back of my mind, but not like that I was trying to do it. I was just acting in theater. And then when somebody called me one day and said, "Hey, there's this new company and they want to hire some actors," and I remembered, "Hey, you're an actor." So it's like, oh yeah, that sounds awesome. I would love to do that kind of thing. So I just really lucked out, and you know, I was just at the right place at the right time. And once I started, you know, working in anime, and then I went ahead and I got an agent, and I started, you know, doing other kinds of things, doing commercials and industrial voiceovers, and, you know, all different kinds of acting stuff. And I guess I did kind of always want to be a voice actor, but I never really knew how to do it, so it just kind of happened. It just happened. Lucky me. Yeah.
When you're dubbing,
Mm-hmm.
you may have already answered this earlier.
That's okay, you can go ahead.
But when you're dubbing
Oh, not usually, no. No, I mean, it depends on how much work you have to do in that particular session. I was saying earlier, like, we used to record 2 episodes at a time because it was only 2 episodes that came out on a videotape. Nowadays, what usually comes out is a box set that'll be about 12 or 13 episodes, so we'll work on that whole thing. Now, depending upon the size of the role that I have, I may just be doing some small bit parts or something and go in and record for an hour. But let's say if I had a more major character who might have 8 or 10 or 12 hours of recording, you can't really do that at one time. So the most you would ever have at one time is usually about 4 hours would be typically the longest session that you would have. And kind of the exception with that is if you have to travel. So I live in Houston, and let's say if I'm working up in Dallas, and let's say maybe they had 6 hours of recording for me to do. I would go ahead and do that whole 6 hours at one time because I had to come so far to do it. If I had 6 hours of recording to do in Houston, where I live, I would just split it up and do 2 3-hour sessions, you know. So yeah, you can't, it's just, I know it seems like, oh, you're just talking, but it's talking the whole time and screaming and, you know, all of those noises and everything, and just really after 4 hours you are shot. It's really hard to keep doing it for more than that. Let me see, we just got a couple minutes. I can do maybe two quick ones. Yeah?
How was your experience when they asked you to play Bontacoon?
Oh, Bontacoon? Okay, this is a true story. Funny thing about Bontacoon. So I was saying earlier how much I love critters, especially ones that don't have mouths. I was at the studio. I was at ADV Studios back in the olden days. I was walking down the hall, and Don Brush, who recorded Full Metal Panic for Mofu, he saw me walking by. He's like, hey Tiffany, come here. Can you, yeah, you can, okay. It was weird. It's like he never even got the whole question out of what he wanted me to do. And then he's like, okay, we'll just call you. And I went in and I was Bontacoon. And it was fantastic because there are no mouth flaps, flippity flaps. And and all he says is, that's it. That's all he says. So it's great. It was great. Yeah. Last one.
How was your experience working with hentai?
Oh, I'll tell you something that's funny about hentai is that I've done a couple of those. When you're in the studio and you're working on hentai, suddenly all of the normal stuff that you say in a regular recording session is dirty. I'll give you an example. So an actor will read a line, and then the engineer fiddles around with what you've just done. And so when you say something like, let's see if it fits, or let's move that into place, or we're going to move that back a little bit, it's like everything that you say is dirty. So that's what it's like working on a hentai. It's like all that stuff that you would normally say during any recording session, which is perfectly innocuous, suddenly you're saying, let's see if this fits, and you're like, it's like everything I'm saying is now dirty. Anyway. Thank you guys. So I'm going to be back over at my table later.